Wakefield, it's the Nolan Carnett Show, starring Nolan by enjoying Nolan. This guest this week returning back to the show, Will Pipicelli. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the podcast. And joining me this week is his long-awaited return, his second episode, building up the on the table of appearances on the program. I'm sure one day he'll reach the Tom Brady amount on here if there's enough to talk about, which there is, that possibly could happen. But this is a special episode, his second appearing on here, talking about all stuff Rhodey. Mr. Will, thank you for joining us this week.
Nolan, thanks for having me back. I know last time I was early season 3, was that what it was?
A while ago. No one like besides yourself has mentioned specific times that they've been on, but it's been a while. And what we talked about last time was the beginning, our hopes and predictions of this season, and obviously it's in full swing, and stuff probably hasn't been necessarily all the same with certain teams, but that's why we're here to discuss.
Yes.
I want to start with obviously talk about the positive stuff first to make it not as depressing as the other stuff will be. Women's basketball season, regardless of the fan size and whatnot, and COVID, and I know they've had certain spots here and there with that situation, but they've had an amazing season. I'm sure, again, another example of blowing expectations out of the water, although knowing that what happened last year could be a replication. How do you assess their season so far, and how many more wins do they need to have in order to be ranked for once?
I think the best way to describe it, it's just like in one way refreshing to see and have women just be the dominant story, and deservedly so. They've had a spectacular season. It's just so like nice to see and so great to see. The fact that in year 3, Tanya Reese is this team playing for an NCAA tournament berth in a program that didn't even think about those 4 letters really before she took over. It's just incredible. I remember my freshman year when I was going to their games, maybe like a lack of attitude, correct attitude, effort, like across the floor. And then Nolan, Riley, and I walked into her office her first year because we were doing a preview for the cigar. And I remember we left that office being like, wow, like very, very few often in any interview I've ever done where we had to like go down. We were on the 3rd floor of the Ryan Center. We went to the 1st floor, and just the entire ride down to the elevator and walking back to Eddie Hall, we were like, oh my goodness. And then she certainly proved that to be true. Just a spectacular season. Big win against St. Louis last night to kind of keep the good vibes going. And then, as you said, undefeated in conference play. Big matchup with Dayton next Wednesday, the 16th. So not this one, but the following one. That's the thing, their non-conference schedule wasn't necessarily the greatest. They did have a Power 5 win over a Virginia team, her alma mater, which is always great to see. They're definitely going to need to ride the A10 table pretty hard, I would say. Probably split those games against Dayton. You have to go there, which will be a tough environment to play in. But it's really all about racking up the wins and see how many you can get, because maybe the quality of opponent isn't there like some of the other counterparts competing for the NCAA tournament. So you definitely need that quantity of wins. So as many you can get, I'm sure she will, and the rest of the Rams will take.
Would you be able to consider this team to be able to do damage into the NCAA tournament if they're able to win the A10 tournament, or is that a whole nother beast that you sort of have to just assess later on?
I mean, I think it's twofold. Like, on one hand, they're a team that has no expectations necessarily from the outside. I think inside, Coach Reese told me last year that they wanted to win the A10 regular season, win the A10 tournament, and go to the NCAAs, and that's obviously a fantastic goal. Last year came up a little bit short, but of course still had the very, very, very successful season that they did. So then this year, I think they still have those same aspirations, and it has definitely played out that they may be in a stronger case to do that this year. In terms of, can they win an NCAA tournament game? I mean, why not?
Yeah.
If they're kind of have the projection they're going, they'll probably end up as like a 12 or 11 seed maybe. And they're 5 or 6 seed. You're playing essentially a road game. The other team's playing a road game too, where the NCAA women's tournament does their first round matchups in host cities and stuff. So Yeah, why not? You're the
Yeah.
underdog. You got no expectations. They I'm sure love that attitude to be able to go and surprise people, punch them in the mouth. So yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They can win a game or two.
And if it's not Rhode Island pulling off, if it's not the men's team pulling off another upset like against Oklahoma a few years ago, then might as well have the women's team this year. And this, from my perspective, I'm not at every game or at nearly every game as you are covering them as in depth as you are and to the level that you are. But from a fan of basketball, college basketball, and that sort of stuff, it gets me nervous. The success they have in a little word, only in the sense that you see an example similar to Dan Hurley. He rebuilds a program, brings it to heights, make the NCAA tournament, and then next thing you know, they don't have the money for the state to pay him as he should be compared to other teams. Does the success that they've had make you nervous in any sense that she could be going to another program after this, or is this something where she's going to stay for the long haul, hopefully?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I would know her well enough to say one way or the other. I would say that if she wants that opportunity, she's definitely earned it. If there are programs that have some job openings in a Power Five conference, they should definitely be looking at the smallest state in the union, because something that's happening here, especially so early on, hasn't happened in a long, long time, and
Yes.
that's definitely credit to her and her staff. In terms of like, would I be nervous? It's, in my opinion, no. Like, you took your first head coaching job, you've absolutely ran with it, and now
Yeah.
if that's what you want to do, go do somewhere bigger and better. Then absolutely, you certainly have the power and the privilege to go do that. It would be hypothetically like not great for URI, but on the
Yeah.
other hand, I think everybody would know that you've definitely earned the good graces of this fan base, and we would
Yeah.
wish you absolutely nothing but the best. And probably the same thing holds true for Hurley, even though he went to the school just a few miles down the road relatively
Yeah.
to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
you know,
Um, no, yeah. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm curious also in this situation because as you mentioned, as we've all bared witness, this humongous cultural change to the program environment, bringing people to tune in more to this program on a national level. You see the team make on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. But besides this season, you witnessed it progress throughout the last 2 years. Does this team have the capability to sustain this success after the season to other seasons, or is this something that may be tough to continue?
Yeah, it's they definitely have a good foundation with place. If I think the biggest thing that Coach Reese was adamant about changing is just the culture of this program and setting that up to be as successful as it is. They definitely have an upperclassman predominantly team. You've got MP, who's a redshirt junior, so she's got some year left. Chanel Williams, a grad student from PCU, who's just been terrific. She just reminds me of just like Russell Westbrook or or Mariah Jefferson. I used to watch her growing up playing for UConn. Des Elmore, another grad student. So, especially with the way the portal works, you can rebuild a team overnight.
Yeah.
But it is good to see that foundation is there in a cultural sense, that whoever she decides to bring in, what talent brings into this program, they're going to be able to assimilate to it and respond to the tone that she's setting
Yeah.
pretty quicker than not.
On another completely different note, but it pertains to this next question in the sense that you see with the PC men's team, which is, you don't talk about here at the URI for the men's program, but they're talking about how successful that program has been and how their head coach Ed is, potentially going to win should be for coach of the year. At this point in the season, is Tammy Reese in that same conversation for the women's coach of the year position, regardless of where conference is?
Yeah, she might just have a tougher time doing it relatively quickly, just because they're not, have that big as a national spotlight.
Yeah.
Just because, like, why as great as a season they're having for Rhode Island history, comparing it to national, it might be kind of tough to communicate that message to the national media. But I mean, she's coming off an A10 coach of the year win already in her second season. So people definitely know who she is. She's especially with her WNBA pedigree. The fact that she's very close with Dawn Staley, who is inarguably one of the top 3 coaches in the sport right now, definitely helps coach the national team to an Olympic gold medal this summer. So her name's definitely out there. It might be a little bit tough for her relatively, like I said earlier, to Cooley, just because one team's knocking on the door of the top 15, top 10, and the other one's getting votes in the country. So that may be a little bit far of a stretch, but
Sure.
she'll definitely have the national media attention on notice, especially if they do well in Delaware the first week of March.
Now, you had just mentioned the transfer portal and being able to build a team overnight. Unfortunately, I mean, I guess in a sense, yes, the other program, the men's program that is, and we go into a different segue of this recording, but the men's program, obviously, that it's known that they went through the transfer portal. That's where a majority of their players have come through the last few years. And as of this recording, this will be out in 2 weeks, but the team is 12-8, losers of the last handful of games. You have a front row seat to all this, covering the games and reporting in the media scrum and all that stuff. What's the problem going on right now after starting out so hot and so well, and why does it seem like it's always happening the last few minutes of the game?
Stone and I did the first game of the season, I believe it was against BU. And one thing that I talked about was the biggest question entering the season, is who's going to be the guy. Fats is gone. And it's two ways it can go. It can be that you have all these guys who can share the responsibility, and one night it's going to be Shepard, one night it's going to be Ish El-Amin, and go down the line. On the other hand, you're going to have a situation where you don't have that guy who can make the game-winning shot, make the right pass when it matters late. And your team kind of crumbles down the stretch, to put it as harsh as that is. And I think earlier in the season, when they maybe a bit inferior competition, you could see those guys step up, whether it was El-Amin making free throws down the stretch. Even the first game against LaSalle, where Ish Leggett drove to the basket for a game-winning layup. But when you get in those situations further and further, and you don't have the pedigree or the person to look forward to, the guy who puffs his chest out and says, I'm going to go take care of this.
Yeah.
You start to kind of freeze up a little bit. The fact that they blew 2 15-point leads at home, back-to-back games, especially against a team like GW. And then next game, just Jacob Gilliard, the fantastic experienced pro from Richmond, just kind of was like, all right, guys, I've been here before. I know how we're going to do this. And he did it. And that's exactly that. And then, of course, just the 2 back-to-back losses against Dayton and Fordham. The one last night against Fordham was not how the other few have gone, where Rhode Island was pretty much in the game the entire time. They went down double digits first half to a team that was not projected to do very well in the A10. So of all the way the losses, free throw shooting has been poor throughout these last few weeks. Last night, they shot 8 for 20. I believe I was looking at that stat sheet right before we jumped on this. And that's been a recurring issue too. So it's been a lot of things, but I think a lot of them, the main ones, kind of just stem from psychologically, and who's going to be the guy that steps up and goes close out a game for this team.
How do you now this season? I try my best to get to every game. I don't think I've missed I think I've missed very few, to speak proper English, the last few years since I've been at URI, and there's always someone who I look towards in terms of a player who new on the team or whatever that I go to interest. And this year is someone who I'm sure you have a lot of interest and enjoyment in, is Sebastian Thomas, hometown guy home state guy from around Providence, went to Hendricken and New York for prep league basketball, came here. Although maybe statistically, in terms of points and stuff like that, might not be providing a whole lot minutes wise, and plus or minus an assist, providing a whole heck of a lot for this team that has especially been struggling the last few games. From a perspective of yours, why is it that it seems that after, especially the recent game, helps the team come back and then it gets taken out with a minute and a half left? And then is this a situation where he needs to stay in and continue to help carry this team to a win, or is it a situation where he's a freshman, needs to be taken out?
It's funny you say that, because when they played PC, it started December, he came in midway through the first half, gave Rhodey the lead when they were down double digits. Comes out of the game, they down by 11 or 12 at halftime. Comes back into the game second half. Rams cut it to 4 or 5. He checks out. PC wins comfortably. And then, so on one hand, it's he's there. He was the reason you guys were winning so much. And then when Shepard was out against Richmond, he played a lot of minutes. He played 35 minutes. Rarely does Thomas play more than rarely does he play more than 20 before that, 20, 25. And he was playing great. He was going pound for pound against Gilliard. And then just late, Gilliard got the best of him.
Yeah.
So kind of two conflicting answers, but at the same time, I think in the camp where if your older guys aren't really getting it done, go give it to the freshmen. Let them play it out. I think I don't want to say this season is going nowhere because I think this team has the talent to cause some noise later on. But if this guy who was supposed to redshirt and now is starting games in less than 4 months, like you got to also let him figure out on the job too. You can only watch so much film before you got to make the right pass with a minute and a half left in the game.
It's only so much where you can hype him up in press conferences after games and all that stuff. But I think, and nothing against the two upperclassmen or whatever year one of them is, and nothing against them. They're great players and whatnot. But Sebastian Thomas is providing, I think, enough to say, hey, let me start some more games. Let me have some more starting minutes because he's helping this team. And I don't know what it is because the last few games that I've seen, it's not like these guys are providing enough to keep them their starting roles. But who knows? Hopefully they turn around soon because I know that the season is getting tougher for them.
Very tougher.
Yes, very tough, and it's gonna be as they say. There's gonna be a lot of eyeballs on the coaching staff to see how they deal with this and what goes on in the offseason. Is the situation with Thomas? I mean, I know with Walker, Antoine speaking, that he's older and he is sort of almost the sixth man. He's been on the bench or that's really his role. But his situation himself too, providing valuable minutes. He may not score a ton, but he's getting offensive. He's getting rebounds. He's very defensive, very strong, and then he gets pulled out near the end as well. The last few games, should he be starting, or is that a situation where he's like Buchanan, where he's better off on the bench to help?
Yeah, I don't really. Coach Cox refers to the starting five, which hasn't changed, injury permitting, and then Malik Martin and Antoine as the starting seven, which, fine. Like if Antoine and Malik are coming off the bench but still getting their minutes, like that's perfectly okay with me.
Yeah.
What matters more to me is what the team's looking like at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Which I think you kind of alluded to in this question and your last one. And that's, I think, an area where Walker is definitely could be playing more for sure. He's a guy that usually makes the right decision. He's very good at passing from the post. He's been able to shoot the three better in conference play than he did in non-conference play. And I think him and Malik Martin especially, has just been the most consistent player for Rhode Island this entire season. He grabs boards, he makes his free throws. He's not the greatest shooter from the outside, but he's usually guarding against the best player, that wing player on the other team. So Walker and Malik Martin have just been steady Eddie this entire season. When we were playing, who was it? It was GW or Richmond. It was one of the two. And Makai Mitchell was taking a 3-pointer down with 20 seconds left in the game. Would a Walker have made a better decision there? Possibly. Who's to say? But it's definitely interesting how sometimes the closing lineup shakes out.
I was gonna ask you the question of the Mitchell brothers shooting threes from the outside or shooting 6 shots from the elbow and missing all but maybe 2 or 3 of them. And you go on Twitter and sometimes that can be a cesspool of bullshit. But
yes.
I see in the last handful of games a lot of people, whether it's media personnel who work for news stations or former players who now analysts who don't work for a network. And nothing against them and former players, but a lot of them talk about a leader, and you had alluded to this earlier with Fats no longer being there, and there's no true leader. Is that what you attribute to a situation like that, where you see the Mitchells brothers, and nothing against them, they're phenomenal players and they've saved the team from being any worse, but when they're shooting 3-pointers, is that a tribute to no leader on the team in terms of other players there, or is that just it's the end of the game and there's nothing we can do?
Yeah, it's there's obviously various different types of leadership. There's the guys who lead by example, and then there's a guy who is the rah-rah type of guy who's in your face. Maybe that's less seen in kind of today's sports climate than you were even 5-10 years ago. But just having that guy that's gives you confidence, I think is huge.
Yeah.
And whether that's hyping them up in the huddle, hyping you up on the court, telling you what to do, I think it's fair to say that we don't necessarily see a clear person on the court being like, hey guys, like bring it in, we need to do X, Y, Z. Maybe in the huddle, completely different story. But when you have your supposed leader is not necessarily playing to the best that we know they can play, I think it does affect the other team. And if like, oh, he's not on his game, so I'm gonna have to compensate with this jump shot, maybe that's
Yeah.
part of where it comes from. I think a lack of leadership it's kind of a cliche that gets thrown around a bit too easily. But from going to the games and having a close view that both of us do, you can kind of tell that sometimes that late game execution kind of that's where it shows up. And when
Yeah.
it shows up that frequently, maybe that is to kind of a lack of leadership and a lack of a guy being like, hey guys, like bring it in, we're good, we got this. This is what we need to do. And if we do X, Y, and Z, we're going to walk away with a victory.
I want to now, after all that, after discussing the negative sides of what sort of happened, what do you like about the team so far, and what do you need to, what do you want them to see to do better, or what do you want to see them do better in terms of success? And I'm sure Sebastian Thomas and another Antoine Walker is part of that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Thomas's floor vision is absolutely incredible. His ability to his passing is just very, very good for a player that's so young. Shooting can work on, but that'll come.
Yeah.
Especially shooting's something that you get enough shots of, you'll get good on it. So I'm not really worried about that. His floor vision, his ability when to push the pace, when to kind of slow it down. For a guy who gets so many assists, his turnovers are very low. But in terms of what the team can do better, they're first of all, let me say they're very good on defense. Kel Mitchell is having an absolutely fantastic season down low. He's probably been their best player during conference play. Has a few mental lapses here and there, but primarily he's been a bedrock down low for Rhode Island. So his ability to protect the paint has been huge. Is there, and as a result, their ability to kind of limit good jump shots from two has been strong as well. I think what this team can do better, the turnovers they were very bad at the start of the season. They've gotten a little bit better. Free throw shooting has been a massive concern. 40% last night, 15 for 31 against GW, I believe. Not very strong in one of the other losses most recently. But this team needs confidence, and honestly, they need to win. It's easier said than done to just get that monkey off their back. But when you've got a schedule that looking like Dayton, Davidson, VCU between now and Valentine's Day, that's tough, man.
Yeah.
That's really, really tough. And you think they'd have those opportunities to get those early conference wins against a schedule that wasn't nearly as strong as some of their A10 counterparts. They haven't played St. Bonnie's yet. Duquesne's always been a tough game for them. St. Louis has always been a tough game from them. They lost at Dayton. Now they got to welcome that young and fiery bunch back to the Ryan Center. They got to invite Davidson, arguably the best team in the conference, to the Ryan Center. The trip to the Siegel Center and VCU is, never fun, even though the Rams have had some success down there. So it's kind of a cop-out to say a lot of their, I think, confidence issues stem from them needing a win. Yeah. But it's going to be tough to get. It's going to be very tough to get, especially if they're going to keep shooting the ball the way they have been.
We talked about it quickly before we got going here. I did my marvelous, wonderful little countdown. And I also asked you this all those many months ago when you first came on, in terms of what this season does for this program, but also the women's program, and I think football as well. Now that we're at this point, how important is the remainder of the season for Coach Cox at this point?
It's a lot bigger than when we first talked, Nolan. Yes. It's a lot bigger than we first started. I was looking before we got on. He'll only have a year left on his contract after the season. He signed a 5-year deal when he took over for Dan Hurley. Now he's in year 4. Last season, underwhelming 10-15. This season, they were projected to finish 7th, so kind of in that middle class, the A10. But you got to start off conference play well if you want to escape that 7 range where they were.
Yeah. You
thought they were doing that, but 4 games in a row, each loss kind of getting worse and worse. It's not great. They need some optimism from this program. They need a reason to kind of keep believing in this guy. He's still got plenty of time to do it too. He can turn the season around. He's got essentially a month and a half left. And by all means, the Rams are capable of doing that. But it really is a tale of three parts for Coach Cox. He had kind of a slow start in his first year, which he's learning the ropes of being a full-time head coach. Ended his first year really strongly. His second year, right around Valentine's Day. Remember they had that big game against Dayton, at Dayton, and they got killed. They lost by like 20, I remember. And then they dropped 4-6. COVID ended the rest of the season. And then really since that Dayton game, the Mullen Center, no, that Mullen Center is UMass. I don't know what the Dayton Arena is called. Really since that game, it hasn't been great for this program. So again, he's got time, but just like I said to start this question, it's a lot warmer than when we first talked.
It's like driving on 6 inches worth of black ice. It's not looking too pretty.
No, but it can melt.
It can melt. It may take a little bit of time, which they have somewhat of it, but it's a little shaky. I want to briefly go back to the women's program. We talked about the success and what Tammy Reese has done for the program and the rest of the staff and the players that she has. What the hell is the problem with them not still being able to gravitate any people to come out to watch the games? What else do they have to prove?
It's unfortunate, really. It really it's sad to see. Even the men themselves have had a tough time getting season ticket holders to come out. Whether that's people kind of too afraid of COVID, wrong time, like kind of times not matching up with their season schedules. I'm hopeful that the students are kind of starting to take notice that this team is very good and they play. Not only do they win games, but they win games in a very fun and engaging way. But yeah, man, it's you always want to see people support
Sure.
all the sports programs, and especially a team that's been as dominant as they have. You just hope that they can start packing the arena and get eyeballs, and if they're not coming to the arena, they're watching on TV. So and still following along with the team, listening to our friends Zach Austin and Paige Messier on the calls of a lot of those games. They do a great job.
Oh, he was. Oh, I know she was just on. It's the kid from Rick. He's got Cam's Corner podcast, and he was on. She was on there. Paige was, and hopefully, if it plans out, get her on here and get on the real podcast.
The podcast in Rhode Island.
Yes, no offense to Cam Corner, no offense to Adam Bernstein, no offense to the other jabroni who does the other high school in Rhode Island college podcast, but this is where it's at. There's a huge variety, and who the hell wouldn't want to be on here? But no,
I've been seeing some of your guests, Nolan. They've been impressive. They've been impressive.
Well, I try my best, and it's not a niche concept of the show compared to these other ones, but it's a niche audience in terms of they may not be humongously known, but as long as it matters to me, because that's all the hell it matters to me. I don't care what the other people think. But I want to and Zach had to mention, oh yeah, you got to have her on. You got to have her on. She's amazing. She's on all this stuff. I want to ask you this, seeing that, you're involved so much with the URI athletics and covering them, would be the radio or when you were at the paper, what have it be. In your perspective, in your job you're trying to do, in this season specifically more than others, how hard is it for you to cover such a completely opposite range of programs and the success they've had this year?
Yeah, I haven't covered I haven't been able to go to as many women's games as I like to. But thankfully, we got a lot of great people who have been going to those games. I'm doing some great job, whether it's radio. I know Aniacon and the Cigar crew have been doing a great job with them. But yeah, the schedule fills up.
Yes.
I was looking at I make like a monthly calendar. I've got the schedules on my phone for both games, and back to back days. It can be a lot.
Yes.
It's always great to go to Ryan Center though, see all the great people, see especially a lot of the students that I've had the pleasure of working with starting to kind of like grow in their roles, whether it's Paige, who was in one of my URI 101 classes. Another student, Hannah, does some work with the athletic department now. Zach used to write for me, all these great people, and kind of starting to flourish. And kind of remember when I was in their shoes, looking up to the people above me. So that's something that I take pride in, regardless of what sporting event it is that's on the calendar. Seeing all those great people doing what I know they're capable of.
Now, I want to end on this question. We've talked about, so it's maybe being a dead horse, as they say. but come March time, realistically, what do you want to see out of both the men's and the women's program at the end of the season?
I don't think it's unrealistic to hope that the women can win the tournament,
Yeah.
win their tournament. I really don't. They're undefeated right now. They've had a huge winning streak to start the season, lost 3 games in a row, and have won every game since. So I don't think it's unrealistic at all for them to cut down the nets in Wilmington, Delaware, where they're having the A10 tournament. As for the men, you just want to see something that shows life in this program. I
Yes.
think is the
Sure.
best way to put it. They don't necessarily need to cut down the nets in DC, but they can't be losing the first round either.
Yeah.
And they can't be playing in that um, and the Wednesday game, or even playing a tough team in that Thursday game too. So the expectations are different, and I don't think a lot of people in the state and around these teams are used to the roles that they're in right now. But it is what it is. Congrats to
Yeah.
the women's team for doing so well. We hope their success continues. But as for the men, they need to show something.
Yes.
What that something is, I think everyone has a different opinion on, but they gotta show that thing to
Yes.
make people still believe in this team and this program.
When John Vanner Jr., and I love him, he was on the podcast as well for everyone out there. When he is showing more life and energy than the program is, that they need to change some things around fast. But Will, I want to say for episode 2, obviously I'm more experienced, I've done this more. So, but thank you so much for having the enthusiasm to do it. It means a great deal.
Oh, of course. I'm getting my wisdom teeth out tomorrow, so I came back to Connecticut, and I was like, oh, Thursday night, let me go talk to Nolan. We'll talk some roadie sports, and
Well, that makes
put me in a good mood before I go under the knife.
Will, I'll leave you this. I don't know if you do, you may not, but the floor is yours to promote, plug anything that you have or want to share with anyone else out there.
Oh, I mean, personally speaking, just on behalf of everyone at WRIU, just kind of keeping that momentum going. We're going to have our radiothon starting up pretty soon. We've got some exciting new things that we're going to try out this year relative to years past that I'm pretty hopeful for. But then personally, dealing with senior year, that's tough.
That's tough.
We're in the job market. So if anyone watching needs a sports comm person, a journalistic role, maybe SEO marketing, don't be afraid to hit up my line at Will_Pipicelli on Twitter.
Yes. After you watch this amazing episode, look in the bio. The links will be there. Or if I can't work that technologically, just you'll figure it out. And when you watch this final episode, you'll know who's the best. And the best was my guest today. I'll say, if you like what you tune into, why wouldn't you like what you're tuning into? Subscribe, follow, like, comment, share, turn that post notification bell on. Share with your friends and family. Follow on Instagram, Nolan Cart Night. Follow on Twitter, Nolan Cart Night. And I'll see you next week for another edition. And in the words of Johnny Carson, I bid you all a heartfelt good night till we see each other again.